It's funny how when I think about my weaknesses, my movement patterns, it always comes back down to some sort of glute inefficiency, some sort of glute weakness. It's funny how that happens. And when you look at physiotherapy at large and strength and conditioning at large, it always comes down to some sort of glute dysfunction. It makes sense in one way because the glutes are probably the most strongest muscle in the body. Hip extension is probably the strongest extension, strongest joint movement that we have in the body. If you think about the deadlift, you think about what we're capable of. The glutes are probably the most capable of strength. If you think about, how much can you glute thrust relatively to how much you can extend on the leg extension, and then obviously bicep, triceps, all of that comes far, in the distance. Nowhere near the strength of the glutes. So the glutes always the King Kong of the whole thing. Thinking about this adductor strain, adductor pain that I have upon load, brings me back to a time that I had it, before. And went back through the notes and went back through my write-ups, and I realized that one of the things that sorted it out, in fact, I never really spoke about it, but like you could see, I'm talking about pain, and then the moment I did this thing, it disappeared. And that thing was the booty band. As soon as I put the booty band on, it kind of disappeared. Interesting. What does the booty band do that will contribute to an adductor pain? My mind kind of races to what the glutes do. Well, the glutes externally rotate and extend the hip. Okay, so what happens if I really warm up the hip extension part of that equation? I just do something like this, something that doesn't tax out the back or any other structure really, but really stresses out the glutes. The glute medius and minimus also get a bit of a touch here because you're on one leg and there's a bit of a rotational force and it's a balancing force. And so I thought, yeah, that's a really, really great exercise. And so when I first come in and I put the bar on my back and I did a few reps, it's very tender, very, very tender on the left adductor. But then I do a few of those sets of those single RDLs, all of a sudden it feels a little bit better. You throw into the same equation the idea that I have anterior pelvic tilt, and I've had it damn near since I've started walking, I want to say. I've always had an anterior pelvic tilt. And it's like, okay, so do I have some sort of a movement pattern problem where my glutes don't really like to be the main dog when it comes to hip extension? So why the hell would the adductors hurt because of that? Well, maybe the adductors are doing the hip extensing rather than the glutes. It would make sense. How can the glutes act upon the hip when you're stuck in anterior pelvic tilt? It makes it very hard mechanically to engage your glutes when the thing is already outstretched and not in a position to act. So then I'm thinking, okay, so all of these deadlifts and squats that I'm doing, maybe it's really heavy on the adductors. And oh, wow, okay, so that's an interesting observation because every time I do a lot of volume on the squat, what do I feel? I feel a lot of adductors. What might that be? So this is where we can, get on forums and argue until the cows come home about what drives what and what squats do, what they don't do. But like if you do squats with an anterior pelvic tilt, likely chances are it's very, very likely that you're going to be feeling that in the adductors. For the reasons I just stated, the glutes are basically subbed out because they are mechanically disadvantaged in those positions. The adductor starts to kick in. Now, how the hell does the adductor help hip extension? The adductors are a monster group. They are monsters. And a lot of people don't put respect on the adductors because they're simply not that sexy. Who the hell sees a pair of adductors and goes, wow, that's really good? When you think about leg development, everyone talks about quads. That's just the aesthetic part of the leg. But the adductors, man, they have their little fingers in everything. Hip extension, adduction, obviously, hip flexion. There's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of fibers attaching a lot of different ways. And so makes me think, maybe adductors are pissed off because they're just simply too tired. Everything I do is a damn hip hinge. So if I'm a hingy kind of lifter, and I'm also a anterior pelvic tilt type of lifter, where are we left? Well, you're left with a guy that likes to hip hinge and hip hinge with those adductors. That would explain a lot. That would also explain why my legs, my adductors, my groin is so resistive to any sort of stretching in the middle splits machine. So resistive. It's like you're trying to stretch the very thing that makes us function. every single day. So interesting stuff. So I don't think you can go very, very wrong anytime you focus on the glutes. They have a humongous power output. So if you can get the glutes to fire a little bit more, you will have better bloody everything, probably. Even the bench press, if you think about it. If you're doing leg drive properly, even the bench press will benefit. We know exactly what glutes do when it comes to athleticism, sprinting, jumping, all that stuff. The glutes, the glutes, the glutes. There have been papers upon papers written about how important glutes are. Here I am, hip hingy kind of guy. Very hingy guy. Stuck into anterior pelvic tilt. Maybe I'm just a adductor guy. Very tight adductors, smashed adductors, overworked adductors. Imagine if we got some help for those damn adductors and we got some glute activity. When I do these single leg RDLs, I feel bloody brilliant. It feels amazing. It actually feels exactly like a GHD, and this did cross my mind today. Why don't I do some GHD? That's a glute exercise. It is, but it does involve the lower back, and the lower back makes the anterior pelvic tilt worse when you get a pump in your lower back. So now you're kind of one step forward, one step back, in the sense that, sure, great, the glutes definitely work in the GHD, but at the top range of motion, the lower back turns on, and I kind of get locked out of that final portion of the hip extension because I'm stuck in anterior pelvic tilt, facilitated by the lower erectors. So you can see how if you start mapping some of these things out, you kind of go, okay, we need to cancel that out. So a single RDL is really good because it's all glute, and the lower back is not really involved because it's on one leg and there's a bit of a different vibe to the movement. And also using much less load, and so the lower back isn't really needed, which is all very interesting and all very puzzling. And so anytime you have pain, wherever you have pain, just try and think about who is the boss around that real estate. Who owns that real estate? And in terms of the hip and groin and all of that, you cannot think too long, too far without thinking about the glutes, because really the glutes are the kings when it comes to pelvic function, pelvic strength, hip extension, all that stuff. The glutes have to have a role in this rehab. Appreciate you guys. I will catch you in the next one. Peace out.